this morning, I want to talk about momentum. Now, why is momentum so important? I don't even know how to describe momentum. All I know is when you have it, you feel great. And when you don't, you feel horrible, right? Now, you can call it a lot of things. That things are going well, whether it's in your personal Christian life, your personal life, everything's going well, or in your church, things are going well. But I was looking through some of my notes, and we get what is called the Enrichment Journal. It's sent to every Assembly of God minister across America. And it talked about how many people really attend church. And for years, pollsters like George Barna and George Gallup thought that there was 4 out of every 10 Americans attended church every week. 4 out of 10 Americans. But recent researchers say that now it is 1 out of 5 attend church. Now you need to understand the difference of that is, we're talking, instead of 140 million people, we're talking about maybe 52 million people. Now, to understand, only 52 million people across America attend church regularly, that there are 50 million immigrants, new immigrants. So, 50 million. We are told that 25 of those 50 million speak Spanish that have just come to this country. And if it wasn't for the conversion of those that speak Spanish into Assembly of God churches, we would have had 0 growth in the Assembly of God in the United States. Now, I told you last night that there are 61 million people that attend Assembly of God church around the world. But in the United States, about less than 3 million attend Assembly of God church. And out of those, most of those that have been saved speak Spanish. The average church in America sees less than 10 people come to Jesus in a whole year. That's less than 1 a month. And that 4,000 churches close every year in the United States. You can see many churches have lost their momentum. 35% of all churches are under 50 people in the United States. 50 people, that's about this, less than this room, are most churches. Over a third of the churches in America are this size. Now, how many believe people are lost? Raise your hand. How many believe they need to find Jesus? Raise your hand. Then why are we doing it, is what I'm saying. Why aren't people getting saved? Why aren't our churches growing? It goes on to say more things, but I think you get the point. When you've got momentum, you feel great. People are getting saved, ministries are effective, communities being touched, but when you don't, all of a sudden you feel what's wrong. Now, if you don't know how to get momentum, then you don't know what to do when you lose momentum, right? If you don't know how you got it, right? You don't know how to get it back. So the temptation is, let's do something we did before. Remember those days, those good old days when, the place was filled and people were worshiping? Let's go back and do that because we knew we had momentum then. And we don't have it now, so let's go back. And yet just going back and trying to recreate something doesn't mean it's going to create new momentum. I think you understand that, right? Aren't you glad, that, if you thought, well, when I was back there, my hair was real high, I had a lot of makeup, I couldn't wear earrings, let's go back. You don't want that, right? But see, that's what people do. They don't know what causes momentum. They don't know then what to do when they lose momentum. So they just try to remember back when they were successful or when there was a lot of momentum, and they'll say, let's do that, thinking that will bring momentum back. Now, I think that a lot of churches, and as I said, I visit a lot of churches, and I've visited great churches like Rick Warren's church in Saddleback, about 20,000 people. Andy Stanley's church in Atlanta, about 20,000 people. I mean, Bill Hybels' church, I've been to Bill Hybels' church, about 20,000 people in Chicago. I mean, these are great churches, and you think, how come God is blessing them and not us? I've heard people say this. Well, when all of a sudden things are going good, and they'll say, well, I guess God is just blessing us. I guess we're just blessed. And it makes me think then that everyone else isn't getting blessed. God must be blessing us. All those poor people down the street, God ain't blessing them. But God is blessing us. Now, to me, that's a pretty arrogant statement. That's a pretty serious statement. To think that, okay, God's going to bless this corner, but the church in the other corner, God ain't blessing. Because look, they're not as big as us. So it's got to be more than that. It's got to be, the real question is, not that God, the real question is, what is God blessing? That's the question. Why are some churches growing and instead of saying, well, God is blessing them, but He ain't blessing us, look at us. Or God is blessing us, but He's not blessing them. We ask the question, what is God blessing? And I think there are principles. And I thought, what if there are principles? And Andy Stanley's big on this. What are the principles that a church could follow or a ministry could follow that could help create momentum? That if we could learn from others, from other churches that have good momentum. Maybe there's some principles, regardless of your size, regardless of where you live, regardless of your town, that you could see momentum, that you could see growth and life and things happening. I thought about it, and I deal with a lot of churches. I oversee 450 churches. Let me give you a scenario in a lot of our churches. There'll be a church, let's say it's about 300 people, 350 people, and it's been in the town for 50 years, okay? But they go from like 400 down to 200, 400, 200, but it basically stays about the same. Most churches come after a long time. People leave, and then new people come, so basically you just stay about the same size, about the same number of people. Probably here is no different than any church. You're winning people, but people leave, so they take the place of the new people, but you stay about the same, about 300, 350, let's say that's the number. And what happens is, in a lot of times, that there'll be like a youth pastor, we'll call him Joe Youth Pastor, decides that he wants to be a senior pastor. So he's going to start a church. And so he starts a church, and the first Sunday, 50 people show up. And, and here he has no money. He has no resources, he has no building, but people here, maybe, people that were in his youth group, and now are adults and say, well, he's going to start a church, I want to be part of his church. So they go with him, and now he has like 50 people, and all of a sudden, there's a church that's been in the town 50 years, has a building, resources, people, but stay about 300. All of a sudden, this guy had 50 people in his first Sunday, and now it's 100 people. And now it's like 200 people. And all of a sudden, these guys growing. And then we're thinking, well, here he's just brand new, and this guy's growing, and probably other people from other churches, but at least he's growing, right? And this church still stays the same. And I thought about that. I said, what principles could we apply, even though this guy, this Joe Youth Pastor, he's going to face the same thing that church in 50 years. Eventually, the newness wears off, and people check him out after a while. They don't like him, so they go someplace else, or they move, or whatever. But maybe there's some principles that we can apply to how to create and gain and sustain momentum, and that's what your outline is all about. Now, I've defined momentum as confidence about the future created by a series